So we've got Dean Weingarten,
Correct.
German.
Yeah, my ancestors were definitely German, nearly all of them. And they moved up eventually to northern Wisconsin, where they established farms. And later on, after World War II, branched out into more technical specialties and earned a living. And so my grandfather was a hunter and a trapper and then a farmer.
In North Wisconsin?
Northern Wisconsin and in Idaho. He went out there, but it was a little too wild. My grandmother didn't like all the Indians dropping by and begging for food all the time, so she convinced him, I think, to move back to Wisconsin. I've got a list somewhere on paper that I made a digital copy of the furs he trapped in the first winter. He was back somewhere around 1900, 1910.
Yeah.
And that's how they made the living the first winter there. And then eventually they bought a farm, and my father started out as a farmer, but he was taught trapping and hunting by his father, and then he became a highway surveyor for the state of Wisconsin Highway Department, and then I became a meteorologist and all kinds of things. I did some trapping. I learned trapping. That's how I made some money to go to college with.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You're selling furs?
Yeah, absolutely. But that was before the anti-fur craze became common, and the price of furs went through the basement.
This is in Wisconsin?
Yes, it was
Okay.
in northern Wisconsin. So I learned a little bit of woodcraft.
I just heard the Wisconsin accent right there.
Yeah,
Wisconsin.
yeah, and
Don't you know?
yeah, we are pretty close to Canadian accent because the border is not too far from where we live. You know, maybe it's about 70 miles to Duluth. I mean, if you go across Lake Superior, I guess it'd be about 150 miles to Canada. Canada is an easy drive. And then after I finished my career with the military, I retired out of Yuma Proving Ground, Department of Defense, and then I started writing full-time. I've always been interested in writing. And one day, while I was on the internet, at a discussion forum, somebody said, handguns are useless in defense against bears. And I, being kind of a subject matter expert on firearms, I thought, I don't think they're useless. And this person claimed there were all kinds of cases where handguns, somebody had tried to use one in defense against bears and got badly mauled or killed. And so I sent him a reply and I said, well, can you send me a link to some of these episodes, some of these incidents, because I'd like to see them. Well, I think he acted in good faith, but he couldn't find any, so he didn't send a link. So I and others, my brother among them, we started looking for incidents where handguns had been fired in defense against bears and had failed. Because if they were not good for defense against bears, there should be lots of failures out there, and they should be documented. So we started finding cases, and we set up a criteria. If the handgun was fired, we'd include it in defense against bears. We'd put it in our database. Those cases where a handgun and, say, a rifle and or shotgun or some other deadly weapon was used were considered combination cases, and we didn't include those.
So you excluded all of what you're hyper-focused on just handguns.
Right. And so we were, focused on handguns, and that's what we were interested in. That's what the original question was about. Everybody knows.
All because you got your feathers ruffled by this one guy saying,
well,
handguns can't do anything.
I was curious. I mean, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought I'd read of a couple cases where they were effective, so I thought, how effective are they? And so we initially started looking for failures because we thought they would be out there and we could find them.
Well, you mentioned you were kind of a subject matter specialist
on firearms.
Yeah. Why do you say that? If
Well,
you don't mind me asking.
no, that's
is
fine.
This confidential information?
Not at all. I grew up in the gun culture of northern Wisconsin. I mean, it was the case where the local high school, if you wanted to go deer hunting, you could take the days off and make the work up. And everybody talked guns and hunting. I remember when President Kennedy was assassinated, and the big buzz in the local high school was what kind of gun was used. It's gun culture up there.
What gun was used?
It was a 7.35 Carcano, a Italian surplus rifle that had a scope shipped with it.
Bolt action.
Bolt action. The rifle and scope are not considered the very best in World War II, but they were a service weapon of the Italian military, and they work pretty well. You know, they're a military rifle. They're not somebody who cobbled.
Not the worst.
Right, correct. I mean, they didn't get a great reputation because the Italian military didn't do a tremendous amount of fighting in World War II. I mean, they had the North Africa campaign, and they did fight a bit in Italy, but the overwhelming force of the Allied forces, they surrendered fairly quickly.
Yeah, and we did all the work.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I mean, we could go off into World War II.
We can say, who's going to say otherwise?
Well, I would say that if you look at the Soviet army, they killed 3 out of 4 German soldiers in World War II.
Really? Okay.
And they lost, I think it's about 3 to 5 million soldiers. No, more than that. Maybe it's 7 or 8. Maybe even, closer to 11, the last figures I looked at, 11 million. Then there was another maybe 10 million or so that were killed off by Stalin in the course of his purges and everything. Mm-hmm. And so the Americans, I'm trying to think, I think we lost about, it's less than 1 million, I think. It's like maybe 2/3 of a million. I just don't have those figures on hand. But as I recall reading, the German generals had figured that if you could kill 3 to 5 enemy for every 1 that you lost, you'd win. Mm-hmm. Well, they were killing 5 Russian soldiers to 1 German lost, and the Russians just kept on coming. Mm. And so it was an existential threat to Russia and the Soviet regime. You know, this wasn't something where the Germans were going to say, oh, well, we're going to stop and let you live. But that's all an aside.
Yeah.
So I grew up in the gun culture. Then I became interested in firearms. I was both a military officer and a police officer at different times. I've taught military people how to shoot.
I didn't know you were part of the police. Interesting.
Yeah, I was an officer for a short time. So I was trained in that.
Where at?
Wisconsin.
Okay.
It was, and I found out that was not something I really wanted to do. So then I ended up going into the military for active duty. And I did some training of people while I was on active duty. And then later when I was in the civil service, I transitioned from active duty. After I got out of active duty, I went back to the University of Wisconsin, got a degree in mining engineering, and I had a friend there who wrote for gun magazines, and he started getting me interested. You know, you can do this. It's possible. It's not impossible. And I had an article accepted by the American Rifleman. I think it was 1982, I think. Actually, and then I had another one later on. But then I got into the Department of Defense Civil Service, and I just didn't have as much time when I was building my career there to do other writing. I had a couple articles published, but then I retired. I became I should mention that when concealed carry became available here in Arizona about 1994, I was one of the first providers here in Yuma, and my course did pretty well. We issued about half of the permits here in Yuma for several years. I taught that for 15 years.
You had your own little company or what?
Yes.
Okay.
And then we...
then what happened? Why didn't you...
What happened is that we got constitutional carry, which was the goal. You didn't have to apply for a special permit, get special training and all that to carry.
I see what you're saying. The state of Arizona...
The state of Arizona
the
passed constitutional carry.
Rightfully so.
And then I said, well, I accomplished that. And as I retired out of the Department of Defense Human Proving Ground, God directed me to start writing professionally. I mean, it wasn't the plan. I did not plan to be I always liked the idea of being a professional writer, but
Yeah.
I'll just say, because we don't want to go into all the super details, is that I came back to the church, and things just happened, and I got into a position where I felt compelled to write,
Okay.
and primarily about guns. And I've been doing that ever since, and I now have about 4,000 articles out there, of which the most popular series is probably my series on bears and how effective handguns are in defense against bears.
Bears and handguns.
And we have three.
Did you ever see yourself getting into that? I mean, it seems to me like so fringe.
It wasn't. It was all by kind of happenstance. As I mentioned, there was somebody online who mentioned it, and I thought, well, what's the truth? Is it true? I mean, we should be able to figure it out. And so we started gathering these articles, and we had criteria. If you fired a handgun and the bear stopped the attack, ran off or was killed, we considered that effective. If the bear didn't stop the attack or run off or were killed, we considered that a failure. And we have the initial group of incidents I think was 37, and there was one failure. And so we had found 37 documented cases where people had fired a handgun in defense against bears.
Over the course of how many years?
Well, at the time, I couldn't tell you without doing a little bit of research. But now we have incidents from about 1890 up until present.
Wow. Okay.
And we that first group was 37, one failure. We're now at 205 with 4 failures.
So, if I understand you correctly, there's been 205 documented. Can I say pistol or is it handgun?
Incidents, handgun probably, because they're revolvers and semi-automatic pistols. I don't know of any that were a single-shot pistol.
Okay.
And we're talking essentially cartridge firearms, and those cartridge firearms came into wide use about 1873.
I see.
So
205 documented cases of those, and of those, four resulting in...
4 didn't work. I mean, 4... The handgun was fired, and the bear did not run off, or it didn't stop the attack, or it wasn't killed. And if you look at those 4 failures, they're kind of like, I think the person operating the handgun could probably have done a little better.
User error? Incompetence?
It's not entirely so clear. I mean, we have one where they just didn't use the best handgun for the job. I mean, most of what we see is that the caliber of the handgun is not super important. But I would not recommend using a 22 long rifle or 22 rimfire handgun and trying to stop a polar bear.
Okay.
And that was one of the cases we found. That was up in the Svalbard Islands that are administered by Norway. There's a treaty up there that a bunch of different signatories, and the United States was one of the original ones, that says you can utilize this area for exploitation of resources. You can have a mine, you can fish, you can hunt, you can trap.
Yeah.
And so that still goes on in that area, but it's one of the bigger concentrations of polar bears in the world. So there are a few cases where we've documented that people in Svalbard used handguns to successfully stop polar bears. But in this case, there was a larger party that had a relatively powerful rifle, and this other party only had a 22 handgun and a flare gun. And the party split in two, and one of them figured that the 22 handgun. And they were looking for polar bears, by the way.
Oh, they were?
Yeah,
they were hunting them just to...
No, this was a tourist excursion. And so they found a polar bear. Oh, yeah. And it was about, I think, originally like almost 80, 100 yards away. And it just kept getting closer. And it kept coming. And it wasn't running at a very high speed, but it was faster than a walk. And so this polar bear was interested in them, and they fired a flare gun, and it didn't have any effect. And they fired warning shots from the 22 pistol didn't have any effect, and then they ended up firing shots at the bear at very close range. The person attacked the person at the handgun who dropped it, then another person picked it up, and they found when they did the necropsy on the bear that there were 3 hits to the head of the bear, but none of them had penetrated to the brain. Well, one of the problems is that most people don't know how the anatomy of a bear's head is situated. And the brain on a big bear is about the size of a pint jar. And the head is the volume of about 2.5 gallons.
Oh my gosh, wow.
And the brain in a bear tends to be low compared to where we're used to. So if you look at a line across the eyes of the bear, the brain is below that.
Is that right?
And it's centered and it's low toward the back. So the best, if the bear's nose is pointed at you, the best place to shoot is up the nose and goes right into the brain. Or if it's got the mouth open, you can shoot from underneath and it'll go into the brain. Or from the side, it goes halfway between the ear and the eye is the place that you have to aim.
Man, that sounds like a very difficult target, though.
It is, but we've seen surprising success. I wrote an article, not just about handguns, but all the cases that I'd gathered where bears were, people used 22 rimfire, both rifles and pistols, in defense against bears. And there were like 22 instances, and there was only this one case where up in Svalbard with the polar bear that they failed.
Okay.
And there was a famous case. It became a very important legal case because it eventually established the legal standard for defense against bears in the United States, in the lower 48, because grizzly bears are protected. They're considered threatened in the lower 48. And a person in Montana was having trouble with bears. There were 3 bears that had grown up together. They were probably yearlings, maybe a little older, about 150 pounds in that area. But they're grizzly bears, and they were not afraid of humans. And they had a habit of going around and raiding people's chicken coops and killing the chickens and eating them and causing problems. And this person had his children and his wife in the area, and these bears were not leaving. He chased them off once, and then they came back. So he grabbed an old 22 rifle he had, and what he said was, I didn't think I would. I just wanted to hurt them so they'd run off. Well, he shot 3 bears with the 22 rifle, and they did run off, and then all 3 were found dead within 2 days.
Wow.
And so you don't want to discount the power of a 22 rimfire. There are a lot of big animals are killed with 22 rimfire.
Well, what do you think the cause was, though? I mean, like, what?
Well, because
You shoot him in the head?
No, he shot him in the chest, and you puncture the lungs.
Okay, so
if you shoot from the side, you'll get both lungs.
It penetrated, bounced around probably.
Yeah,
a little
perhaps. Bit. And if you shoot even a big bear in the abdominal cavity with 22, it's probably going to cause peritonitis, and they're going to die. It may take them 2 or 3 days or longer, but it'll probably kill them.
So a 22, I hear you say a 22 caliber is capable of penetrating the soft tissue.
Yeah.
Most of the time in your research. But the head, not so much.
Well, if you
depends on where you shoot.
You have to know the right place to aim.
Yeah.
There's a mythology out there that bullets will not penetrate a bear's head. But the problem is the brain is low. And so if you aim right there, just above between the eyes, you're going to miss the brain altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's just a little high, it's going to go through the soft flesh above the skull. It'll never touch the skull. And the bear will not like it, but it won't incapacitate the bear.
That reminds me of David and Goliath.
Yeah. You have to know where you're aiming.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
Didn't David hit him right there?
Well, it says like right between the eyes, and the stone is said to have embedded itself.
Yeah.
And it obviously didn't penetrate, but it embedded. So, and Goliath was a big guy. So how much flesh there was there? But I did some research on slung stones. This was a sling that David used. And they can be quite deadly. The Romans historians said they could penetrate armor. And
really?
Yes.
Interesting.
And they one of the things, reasons that the Romans had armor on their shins was to prevent slung stones from breaking their legs.
Okay.
And so at least that's what was claimed. So David was probably a natural with the sling, and he probably practiced a lot as he was a shepherd, and he claimed to have, and I don't think he would have said this as just a brag, that he had killed both a lion and a bear guarding his father's sheep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that makes him an extraordinarily good with a sling.
Yeah.
And
What
so
ki-
it's not too surprising that he could kill even a large man.
What kind of bears frequent that area, Judea?
Grizzly bears.
Really?
Yeah, at the time,
Are they the size of ours here?
well,
mean, would
now
they have been?
at present, they tend to be a little smaller.
Is that right?
I mean, where our grizzly bears, and grizzly bears, it's actually Ursus arctos is the Latin name. They're worldwide species. They are found in Europe. They were found in the Middle East. They're not found there anymore. I mean, I think Iran has a few. And they're basically the same species all around the world. They can all interbreed. Their genetics are a little bit different from one place to another, but it's not significant. I mean, maybe a slight color difference. I think the ones in Europe had previously been hunted so hard that, like the United States at, say, about 1900, grizzly bears worked hard to avoid getting close to humans, because if they got close to humans, they got killed.
Yeah.
So now we've had about 3 or 4 generations of grizzly bears in the lower 48 that have been taught humans are not something to be feared. So we have more of them are killing humans in encounters in the lower 48 than used to happen for a long time. And so even though we only have about 2,000 grizzly bears in the lower 48, they kill about as many people as the roughly 35,000 that exist in Alaska.
Yeah. When I think of Europe, I don't think of bears.
No, they're
the
up
Middle
in,
East.
up in the mountains,
Yeah.
away from people. But because they put on real serious protections and are trying to get them to come back now, the populations are increasing and they're starting to have more problems with them.
Have you seen the movie Gladiator with
No.
Russell Crowe?
No, I have not seen it.
You haven't seen that?
No.
Well, I don't want to spoil it for you.
Okay.
But it's been about 30 years, I think, since it's been out. So
Yeah, I think I saw some clips from it, but I don't believe I've
the
seen
reason
it.
I bring it up is because one of the gladiators in that movie, you know how they put on their armor?
Right.
One of them has like a bear head.
Ah.
And I always thought that was interesting because I never thought of Rome having bears.
Yeah, they did. I mean, and bears were reasonably common throughout Europe, probably until about 1200, 1300 or so. And at about that time, Britain got rid of all the bears in Britain. So,
Mm-hmm.
we know that because they talk about it. But the rest of Europe maintained a population of these Ursus arctos bears. There's lots of them in Russia. I mean, that's probably the biggest reservoir of.
You think they kind of migrated that way?
No, they were killed off elsewhere.
I see.
That's what happened. And even in Eastern Europe, they're becoming more common. I'm trying to think of is it Romania? No. There's a country in Eastern Europe that is having more people killed by these bears than they used.
Is that right?
Yeah. And
Okay.
then we have Japan, which same species of bears, but it's on the northernmost island of Japan, Hokkaido. And Japan also has the European black bear, which is a little bit more aggressive than our black bear here in the United States. And between the European black bear and the grizzly bears, well, they don't call them grizzly bears; they call them brown bears.
Oh, they do? Okay.
But they're the same species. In
Europe?
Hokkaido, well, in Japan, I'm talking about. Japan has more people killed by bears than we do here in the United States, including Alaska.
Why do you think that is? Because they don't fear humans.
They've protected the bears. They're up to about over 10,000 population in Hokkaido, and they've gotten used to humans, and they greatly reduced the potential for hunting them. And so Japan, interestingly enough, the articles in Japan say we're having more problems with bears because our population is shrinking and the people are moving into these abandoned farms. Whereas in the United States, they say we're having more problems with bears because the population is increasing and they're moving into areas where the bears used to live. I mean, so it doesn't matter. It's humanity's fault, they claim. So, but bears are aggressive, powerful, wild creatures, and they react to cost-benefit ratios. And if you hurt them, they will run away from you. They will learn that humans are dangerous. And, if you kill one bear and some yearling cubs are nearby and they run off, they remember that. If you kill a bear out in the wild, they have some of the most sensitive noses, and all the bears in the area are going to end up smelling that bear's offal pile and the human scent around it, and they're going to go, humans, killed bear here. They learn. They're not just automatons. And
are they, what's the word? Cannibalistic?
Yes. Oh, yeah. They're very cannibalistic. Particularly,
they don't really care. The meat, wherever it comes from, they'll eat it.
They'll eat it. And it's particularly male bears, especially the older, bigger ones, tend to kill bear cubs. And there's some various theories on why it happens, but it appears to be a significant amount, like maybe 30 to 40% of all the bear cubs that die before they reach maturity are killed by male bears.
Have you ever heard, sharks don't really like the way we taste. They take a bite and spit us out most of the time.
Well, I've heard that. I don't know how true it is. We're not normal prey for sharks.
Sure. Well, I bring that up because do you think bears like the way we taste? Or they don't really care? Food is food.
Bears have an incredible compulsion to put on weight, to eat lots and lots and lots as it gets into the fall, particularly.
Okay, so they're packing on the weight for winter.
So that they can hibernate. So they can survive the winter. So they become much more dangerous in fall because they're tending to look at anything that's meat as a meal.
Okay.
And that's what happened with Timothy Treadwell, we think. He and his girlfriend were up in Alaska, and he underestimated his ability to read bears and prevent them from attacking him. And a grizzly bear a brown bear in Alaska, they're big bears up there. They camped on a salmon stream where there was huge concentration of bears, and it was fall, and they missed their flight out because of bad weather. So they stayed like an extra week. This is my remembrance of it. And in that extra week, a bear came along and wasn't deterred and killed them both and ate a bunch of them.
Were they were seeking out the bears, or they were just kind of on their own little camping trip?
They were seeking out the bears. They camped right next to a really heavily used bear trail along the Salmon River in this park.
For what purpose? To document them?
To take photographs of bears and to...
Was this recent?
That was a few years ago. Let's see, 89, I'm guessing.
Okay. So that's more than a few years ago.
But it was a big deal because Treadwell had said, the bears... He at one point made this statement, I would be proud to be bear scat. Well, because people said, you may get killed by bears. You're taking tremendous risks. If he had gone out, if they'd left when they were scheduled to, they wouldn't have been killed. But probably it would have just delayed what was happening. Bear researchers repeatedly told him, don't do this. It's really dangerous. You're going to get bears killed because when they kill you, they're going to kill the bear that killed you. They ended up killing 2 bears there at the site.
Rangers?
Yes, it was Alaskan troopers. And within the Alaskan troopers are the ones that work as game wardens primarily, but it's all one unit.
To just figure out if the bones are in there?
You mean why did they kill him?
Yeah, I mean...
Well, they went up there. They went to the site where Treadwell had been killed, and they were investigating this, and there was a bear there, and it was very aggressive, and it charged at them, and they killed them.
That's why they killed it. It wasn't the,
Well,
hey,
and
we're going to go find this thing, cut it open, and see if this is the one?
I don't know.
what's
They
the
might
purpose of
have
that?
done that if a bear had just come there. They killed another bear later on, and I don't know if that bear was being aggressive or not, or if they just thought we need to check. But on the first bear, it charged them at a very close range, and one of the troopers had a .40 caliber pistol that he was using, and another person, I'm not sure if it was one of the troopers or somebody else, had a 12-gauge shotgun. But I remember that when I read the account, the trooper that had the pistol was firing at the bear, and he was saying, "Why isn't this guy with the shotgun shooting?" But he killed the bear.
You
And
think a shotgun's effective?
very effective.
Oh, it is.
Shotguns are very effective.
Okay.
It's bears. But
Close.
loaded with the proper ammunition.
Like a slug, or
Slug works very well, but buckshot works very well too.
is that right? It scares them, or
Well, it kills them usually. I talked to somebody who has he may have the most experience with defense against bears in the United States anyway, maybe in the world. And he owns a ranch that's on a salmon river in southern Alaska. And he's had to kill a lot of bears in self-defense over the years. I think he killed the first bear when he was like 14 or something like that. And so I don't know how many. I mean, he tries to scare them off first, but sometimes they just won't learn. And I asked him about the effectiveness of buckshot, because one of the incidents he described to me, buckshot was used. And I said, "Do you find buckshot to be effective?" He says, "Yes, works every time. I've used it."
that's interesting.
But of course, you're not using, when you're defending against bears, your shots are going to be close. Because if the bear is 50 or 100 meters away from you, you don't consider it much of a threat.
Yeah.
And so he killed a lot of bears. I document one of the cases where he was walking, I think it was from the generator shed. They don't have grid power where he lives. They have a generator. Back to his house, and in between he had a dog with him, and the dog, there was a bear there, and it was really close and threatening, so he shot it with a .500 Smith & Wesson, and it was in kind of bad shape. It was probably starving, and then he had to shoot it. He fired 2 more times at it, and it died pretty quickly. But it was, there's just a lot of bears on that salmon river, and if humans are going to maintain a ranch there, they have to be prepared to defend against bears.
As you were talking about this guy, and he's killed a lot of bears, I don't know why this popped into my head, but I thought of Davy Crockett. Have you done any research on him? Is Davy Crockett born on a mountaintop in Tennessee?
Yeah, right.
He killed a bear when he was only 3.
He killed a lot of bears. I don't think he killed a bear when he was 3 years old.
Okay.
But he killed a lot.
You haven't researched that.
I have read a bit about him, and he's a very interesting guy, and fantastic woodsman. So let's see, what else? Didn't he?
He was in the legislature.
Didn't he go to the Alamo? Yeah, he migrated.
He died at the Alamo, I believe.
Yes, he
You
did.
have to fact check me on that, but I believe he died there.
I'm 99% sure he did. He got fed up with Congress and said, "You guys,
bureaucrats,
he says,
do nothing.
you can go to HELL. I'm going to Texas."
Yeah.
That's the story. Anyway.
Sure. A lot of stories.
But
there.
he was a very smart man. It's hard to separate out fact from myth when you're talking about somebody a couple hundred years ago. So
yeah, I digress. But that's what popped into my mind. I wonder if he actually killed a bear when he was alive.
I have been doing some research. I'm probably going to write an article about it, but I want to get all my facts just right.
Sure.
From reading the journals of Lewis and Clark.
Okay.
And they killed a lot of bears, somewhere around 50 or more.
That we know of so far?
That they mentioned in their journals.
Okay.
And there were several that, they shot at or whatever, and they ran off and they couldn't find them or whatever.
And they're using muskets, right?
Well, a combination of muskets and rifles. They had the latest, greatest tech from... is it Springfield Armory? It was an armory, one of the first official U.S. armories, and they were making this latest rifled arm for the U.S. military. Pretty
Yeah.
early on. We're talking around 1800.
Yep.
And so because this was an official U.S. government expedition, they managed to snag the first of those off the line, and,
Nice.
and they took them with them. But they
On their
also
journey.
took a fair number of muskets, and they had some pistols as well. And they had a very famous air gun, the Girinhandi air rifle that could fire 22 shots without reloading.
Have you, in your research, have you ever come across like hieroglyphs or petroglyphs depicting bears?
Yes.
I mean, is this
Most of the
this has been
ones
since the beginning? I'm
most
imagining.
of the ones you see, and there aren't that many, but there are a few they found in Europe.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and they think that these are probably cave bears, but
What does that mean?
There was a species of big bear that we found a lot of its remains in caves in Europe.
Okay.
Fossil remains, and there are different species than our grizzly bear, brown bear,
Interesting.
and they're bigger.
Uh-huh.
And it's believed that a lot of the early humans in Europe killed a lot of these bears.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to be sure which species of bear off a petroglyph or a cave art is.
Yeah, but the fact that they exist, that's what my question was. It sounds like, because you're getting to the idea of man versus this big thing, this big beast.
Yes.
And there's something, I don't know if alluring is the right word, but
Yeah, it's
fascinating about I can conquer this huge
It
beast.
reaches deep into our psyche about who we are.
Uh-huh.
I mean, and as a person who's been a fairly avid hunter most of my life, there's something very primal and that you feel when you're out hunting. Now, I suspect most of the hunting, especially for really big stuff like a bear or bison or a mammoth or something like that, by early hunters was a group activity, where it was, I would say that we were essentially pack creatures, kind of like wolves.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, wolves and humans sort of grew up in Europe together. And people don't realize it, but the gray wolf, which we normally think of as wolves, was kind of a latecomer to North America. Well, that's not exactly right. They existed up in northern part of Canada, Alaska, up in there, what we would call Beringia, before the glaciers left last time. But it appears that wolves were not common if they were here at all. And it's hard to tell because, dire wolves, which were a big wolf-like creature in, let's just say, south of Canada, when the ice sheet was up there, their fossils are very similar to the gray wolf. They tend to be a little bigger, and now that we have DNA to examine, it turns out they were a completely different species.
Have you followed any of that DNA stuff that they're playing around
Well, I
with?
read quite a bit about
like
it.
the woolly mammoth.
Yeah.
And they put that into the mice, and then like these cute little adorable mice with woolly mammoth fur. Have you seen this?
I haven't seen that, but I know that
And
they've
then the
been
wolves,
trying.
the dire wolves.
Yeah, they think they may have recreated sort of a dire wolf.
Yeah.
And they put them into, I think, either, was it wolves or dogs to be the host
I
animal?
believe it was dog.
But
I don't know.
But so, dogs, wolves, and wolves are very close in their genetics. But there's some really interesting and pretty good research done on how wolves and dogs diverged and how that happens. And one of the most famous of those researchers, let's see, she's done a lot of work on polar bears recently, and we corresponded a bit because of the bear stuff, and a lot of her doctoral thesis, I believe, was on the evolution of dogs. How dogs and humans became sort of intermingled,
As friends.
as
Man's best
kinda
friend, right?
Symbiotes, I would say. If you take dogs and humans together, it's a combination that's very hard to beat.
I spent some time down in the Canary Islands off the coast of Spain.
Yeah.
And named after the
dogs
that they encountered, the Spaniards encountered there when they went down there. They found these people that were like 6'4", white, blue eyes,
Yeah.
almost like Icelandic people, but they had these what they call Presa Canarias, and
Well, those are Presa Canarias. I thought that was a Italian dog.
it's in the islands of Spain, and the I don't know if this is myth or this is actual history, but when the Spaniards arrived, they fought back with those dogs, and they were pretty successful. But the Spaniards had cannons and
Yeah. Oh,
rifles, So
a book that I recommend to people if they want to understand the history of the New World. It's called The Discovery and Conquest of Spain, and it's written by a fellow who was a foot soldier of Cortez.
Okay.
And it's a first-person account. It's,
Very cool.
It's probably, there's another first-person account but it's not doesn't cover nearly as much. And then we have the reports, the letters that are sent back to the Emperor of Spain by Cortez. And there's like 3 or 4 of those. But you got to remember, this is Cortez saying, I'm doing a really good thing here.
Right. He wants
and I'm bringing you a lot of treasure and new territory, so back me up. And, I'd kind of like to be governor here.
Yeah.
And Cortez was violating orders left and right. But then, the governor of, I think it's Jamaica, but I'm not 100% sure on that, sent a force to retrieve Cortez and bring him back because he wasn't violating orders. I mean, because he was violating.
Yeah, right.
And Cortez had to move some people out of Mexico City, which I forget what it was, Tenochtitlan or something like that is what it was called back then. And he went to meet these people who were sent to arrest him, and he subverted them with gold. And he said, look, guys, I've got all this gold. You can have some of it here.
Original bribe.
Yeah. I mean, Cortez and Montezuma were fascinating characters in that book that I mentioned, The Discovery and Conquest of Mexico. They were obviously both brilliant Machiavellian princes who would lie to their supporters, lie to their allies, lie to their superiors, anything, whatever it took to win.
So you're saying they're politicians?
That's correct. Okay. They were. I call them Machiavellian princes from the book by Machiavelli, The Prince, where he gives advice to princes in Italy at the time, saying, you need to be ruthless. If you're looking at a policy and you have to lie to make it work, well, then lie. But, when you do good, make sure it's recorded out in public so you get credit for it, that kind of stuff.
I like it, yeah.
I mean, I highly recommend anybody read The Prince to understand how politics can work.
Speaking of Spain and bears, going back to that, Madrid, actually the symbol of Madrid is a bear climbing a apple tree.
Sure. And there are bears in Spain now, up in the mountains, where they get far away from people. And there's more, because they're more protected now, the conflicts between people and bears are getting bigger. I mean, the bears are killing a sheep, a cow, or something like that, and causing problems. And so that's just what happens. Bears generally are not good neighbors, because they want what you want. They like the same things to eat you like
predators, right? Carnivores.
They're omnivores, kind of more. Now, the polar bear is a pure predator. It doesn't eat hardly anything but meat. But most grizzly bears and black bears will eat almost anything. They eat a lot of vegetable matter. They'll eat meat. They love to eat meat, and they can get it because meat is a high density energy source. Mm-hmm. But they'll eat almost anything. Mostly bears in the United States are not interested in eating you because they're afraid of you, because they've learned to be afraid of humans. Mm-hmm. Stephen Herrero is one of the more famous bear researchers. Put out an opinion in his first really popular book in which he said, so it's kind of puzzling why more people aren't killed by black bears. I mean, they're big and strong, and there's a lot of them, and they live close to people, most of them in the lower 48, but they only kill about one person a year. So why is that? And they said, well, it might be that the aggressive black bears are killed off during hunting season. If they're not afraid of people, they're probably going to get killed off by some hunter. Mm. And so we've probably selected black bears for the black bears that are cautious about coming close to humans.
Interesting.
Now, that was his speculation. I think it's correct.
Mm-hmm.
But this year, we have had 4, well, in the last year, not in 2025, but in the last 12 months, we've had 4 people killed by black bears in the United States. There was a woman in, I think it was November of last year, who was killed in her house in California by a black bear that broke in and killed her. And then there was a man in Florida where the black bear appears to have gone into his trailer and drug him out and killed him. And then there were 2 recently in Arkansas in September, only within 45 miles of each other. One was 72 years old and was mowing an area. I think he was on some kind of riding tractor of some kind. I'm not sure how big it was, but he appears to have been, he was attacked by a bear, and his, I think it was his son, was checking on him and saw the bear attacking him and drove the bear away. But his injuries were so severe that he died a couple weeks later. And then the one recently was in a campground, and he had taken a picture of a bear. And we don't know for sure it's the same bear because they haven't done DNA analysis yet. And a bear attacked him and killed him. He was 60 years old. I don't know much about him other than he seems to have been a pretty successful insurance executive agent, and guy's living in a 5,000 square foot house, and he's been married to the same woman for 35 years, and that kind of says success to me. But I want to find more about him, but he's only been dead a week. I don't want to try to intrude on his family. It's a horrible time for them. Father, husband, son, brother.
But he was outside doing what?
He was camping.
Oh, he was camping.
He was at a campground in Arkansas, and I should have the name, but I won't bother looking it up because I don't think it's that important. So that was 2. Arkansas had not had a bear attack in over 100 years. 2 within a month, within 45 miles of each other this year.
And so your argument is, well, if I understand you correctly, you're saying that's your theory is that it's because at one time during the Great Frontier, let's say that time period, bears became
they learned to be afraid of people because
they were afraid of us because if
they weren't afraid, they died.
Yeah,
and that was for grizzly bears too.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no question about it. And we reduced the number of black bears enormously. By 1900, the black bear population was probably about its lowest level in the United States, and grizzly bears were down to just a couple hundred, a few hundred by 1900. But then we learned and said, if we want these creatures around, we got to protect them somehow. Mm-hmm. So we declared national parks, declared hunting seasons, enforced them. Mm-hmm. And I think we went a little too far. We went so far as to now people are saying, well, why would you kill that bear? You only killed a person or 2. I mean, it wasn't the bear's fault. Bear, he was just doing what bears do. It was the person was walking from within 50 yards of the bear, even though he couldn't see the bear. It was a defensive attack by the bear. Well, the person didn't do anything to the bear. He was just there. Mm-hmm. That's Stephen Herrero's construction is to call these defensive attacks. I think that's a misplaced use of the word because the human wasn't doing anything to the bear.
Right.
And grizzly bears have been known since Lewis and Clark times, and certainly before in some quarters, as being especially aggressive. And they are. But they learn to fear humans if enough of them get killed.
Got it. We're out of time. Have you ever hunted bear yourself?
Yeah, I think once, not successfully. A couple times, yeah. I hunted them up in Alaska once, but we didn't see hardly any. I never saw a bear.
Or brown bear?
Didn't see any. No, we were black bear. We could get the black bear. We had permits for black bear up there. They're pretty easy to get. And then my brother, however, as the black bear population in northern Wisconsin has exploded, there's just a lot of bears up there now. And he's killed numerous bears. His daughter has killed bears. His son has killed bears. His friends, he goes on hunts with dogs for bears. He's been on many.
With what? What do they typically use?
Mostly with rifles.
Yeah.
But he's killed a couple with pistols because he had the pistol long and it's a wounded bear and you don't want it to harm the dog. So he runs up and shoots it, that kind of thing.
Is it possible to hunt bear with a bow?
Sure. And some people do. And you can kill bears.
You think that's pushing it?
You have to be much more selective in your shots.
Yeah.
Because if you stick an arrow into a bear's shoulder, it may not penetrate enough to reach the lungs. And
does that make them angry or?
Well, it probably does. Mostly they're going to run off.
You think so?
And then very likely that wound, because of the arrow, is going to get infected and they may die eventually. So you have to be more careful about where you shoot on a bear because it's a bigger, tougher animal than a deer. Now, if you go after something like elk, you have to be even more careful because their bones are even tougher than bears. And so with archery, you just have to be very careful how you place your shots.
So as a bear expert.
Yeah, I'd say more of a gun expert, but I become bear defense expert.
In your travels, in your research, what advice would you give me if I'm out minding my business and a bear comes charging at me?
Well, if it comes charging at you, kill the bear. That's what I tell you. With a handgun. I'd say carry a handgun because long guns are cumbersome and awkward to carry.
Always have a handgun, preferably larger caliber than a 22.
Yeah.
22 is, if that's all you got.
If you're for black bears, probably anything 22 on up will work. But the standard stuff you'd use for self-defense is going to work on black
45, 9
millimeter.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're up in Alaska or someplace where you're worried, like Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, where grizzly bears might be a problem, you might want to go to a little bigger, like a 10 millimeter or a 357 Magnum or a 44 Magnum or 41 Magnum. And you want bullets that penetrate. You don't want bullets that are designed to fragment and open up because they won't penetrate hard enough. And
so no hollow tip or anything like that.
You want solid for like a 9 or 10 millimeter full metal jacket bullet is fine. For the revolvers, hard cast bullets that are designed not to mushroom, and because you need to penetrate. And bears, you got to penetrate further than you do on a human. A human. We're much smaller than bears, and our rib cage is more exposed. Our skin is not as thick as a bear's. So I'd recommend that you use deep penetrating bullets. But the research shows that a lot of the time, just the report of the firearm is loud, and it'll deter bears, and they'll run away. Or if you just wound them with anything, they don't like to be hurt, and so that will often cause them to run off. So you don't always have to be super precise and drop them right there, although that works too.
It sounds like in the fall, if it's like the thick of, hey, we got to get fattened up for winter, and they're still pursuing you, even the loud noise of a firearm might not deter them, and you're going to want to penetrate.
If they get close to you and they're staring at you, that's a sign that they're serious. I would kill them right there. You can be a little more careful with the brown bears if you want to.
Why? What? Careful like what?
Well, because there's more legal consequences for the brown bear.
Brown
bears are considered threatened. If you kill one in self-defense, you're supposed to report it to the authorities. They will investigate and see if you were justified. The legal standard is reasonable. It's not quite as strong as it is for humans. It's essentially, if you believed that you were in danger,
imminent danger,
in
fear of your life,
you can, and you don't have to prove it to its highest standard for bears.
Okay, that's good.
So, and there's an article on Amaland all about that if you want to read it.
That you wrote.
Yeah,
okay.
Right. Because of that court case I told you about where the guy shot the 3 bears, and it went to the Ninth Circuit to appellate court, and the appellate court said, well, it's clear this guy was in fear of his life and feared for his children and his family because he told the responding game warden that, which the prosecutor conveniently did not tell us or the court and claimed that he wasn't in fear of his life. So we believe that he was justified. So
Oh, good. So the Ninth Circuit.
Try the case again with that in mind, and then they dismissed the charges.
Very good. Yeah, so it never went up to the Supreme Court. That's good.
Right. And it went to the Ninth Circuit twice.
Twice.
Yeah. The first one, they sent it
That
back. They said, take this into consideration. They took the stuff, and then they made another finding that said, yeah, but we still want to prosecute this guy.
Yeah.
So then he appealed it back to the Ninth Circuit again, and the Ninth Circuit sent it back to him again. Look, we think you should look closely at this and consider whether your judgment is maybe you don't want it to be biased by the fact that you've already tried this case before.
Yeah.
And that time the prosecutor took the hint and said, we're not going to prosecute him again.
Oh my gosh, that prosecutor.
Well, it was the judge too. There was a magistrate judge that originally heard the case, and then there was a district judge for Montana. It was a fascinating case. I've got, you can read the article on it.
Yeah, I'm fascinated, or I'm interested in it. Yeah, well, that's all the time we have today, Dean, but I really appreciate you coming on. I know you're regularly on Russ Clark's show on Wednesdays, correct?
I co-host with him on Wednesdays, and sometimes when
you talk more about politics rather than bears?
Lots of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, the politics probably more than bears. I hardly ever talk about bears on Russ Clark's show. And
Russ doesn't care
but
about
I do
bears.
talk about the Second Amendment and what's going on, because that's part of what I do, and I regularly write about the Second Amendment cases and what is happening in the courts, and we talk about that a fair amount, and then we talk about almost anything that interests us.
Just really quickly, this is a talk. If I get into this can of worms, I mean, we could keep talking for another hour. However,
sure. How many hours do you want to do?
I am curious of your general take on the Second Amendment and our regulation of it using the Gun Control Act and restricting our ability to get, like, the common person to get a grenade or a rocket launcher or a machine gun.
What the court has been pretty consistent.
I know what the legal standing is. I want to know your opinion. Is that do you believe what the founders set forth as?
I think they wanted to protect the arms that were useful for a militia. However, there is a standard that's been developed called the common use. By the time of the Revolution, grenades were no longer in common use. I mean, the reason was because people found, even though they had whole grenade companies like the Grenadiers in the 1600s, what they found is they're really dangerous to everybody, and they had as many friendly casualties as they had other casualties. I have a fragment of a 16th century hand grenade that I found down in Panama. And they used those in that time period, but eventually they stopped because they were too unreliable that you could, you had to light the fuse and then you had to throw it, and the fragmentation wasn't all that great.
But do you think the founders knew about that?
Oh yeah, I'm sure they did, because they didn't. It doesn't appear that they used much in the way of grenades in the Revolutionary War.
Yeah, because the Second Amendment doesn't say, except for...
No. I think the Second Amendment was meant to protect common military arms at the time, and that you could have cannons, you could...
Machine guns?
Well, they didn't have machine guns back then, but...
They had one.
They had the equivalent.
Yeah.
They had multi-barreled guns, and they had, blunderbusses, and they certainly knew how to set up explosives as mines. So they meant for people to be armed, but most of the people they expected to be armed with their ordinary military equipment. So
can I be armed with military equipment today?
Yeah, you can, but it costs you $200 tax to get a grenade. So it's expensive, and you have to go through a lot of paperwork. I think
but I can't have a machine gun. I can't have an M4.
Well, actually, you can have a machine gun. It's just you got to pay an enormous amount of money, and I think that restriction's going to go away.
The machine gun I get has to be an antique machine gun.
Well, it has to be made before 1986.
Well, antique, yeah, that's what they call antique.
And no, that's not technically an antique, but what it was that in 1986, when they were passing, let's see, the Firearms Owner Protection Act, I think, and that corrected some of the abuses from the Gun Control Act of 1968. They put in a rider in there. It was an amendment that you can watch it being put in online now. I've seen it. And somebody said we're doing away, or we're suspending the rules, parliamentary procedure. And the person who was up there, who was a big gun control guy, I'm trying to think of his name, said, "Do I have a motion for this?" And somebody said, "Yes, motion recognized. But a vote by voice vote." And so I said, no, we got to have recorded vote. And he just ignores them. He says, "All those in favor say aye," and then you hear a couple of ayes. And all those against, nay, and you hear a big chorus of nays. The ayes have it, and they passed this amendment that banned further manufacture of machine guns to be sold to ordinary citizens of the United States. And there's a couple little loopholes in there. Like if you're a dealer, you can get new machine guns. And
so is that constitutional?
No, I don't think it is. I think that will be overridden, but it's going to take a while because there's so many other issues that are working their way up through the courts.
So it sounds to me like if I understand what your viewpoint is, such that you're saying the founders intended to fight force with force, in a sense.
Yeah, no question.
If the British had it, you can have it.
Pretty much.
Okay. If our military has it, you can have it.
It's pretty much, but there.
What do you mean pretty much? I don't see any.
It's because there were some regulations at the time. There were laws in force at the time that persisted after
the Constitution.
Yes, after the
Articles of
after Second Amendment was adopted in 1791. It reads, "The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." So what the courts have done, and I agree with this, I think it's the way you have to do it. They're relying on what they call originalism.
Yeah.
And they said, what did the right to keep and bear arms mean in 1791?
Yeah.
And so they said, look, if you can find a tradition where the right was limited on a relatively wide basis, like, for example, you're not allowed to just, because you have the right to bear arms, doesn't mean you can just go around killing people with a handgun.
Right.
Because, and that was understood at the time.
Well, that's murder. Yeah.
Yeah. But so what they found was that there was a reasonable tradition that you couldn't carry arms around that would just terrify ordinary people. And there was, it said, if you carry guns around and it's to terrify the population, we're going to fine you or imprison you or whatever. It's against the law.
Yeah.
So, and they
it sounds to me like that's threats. Like
it's kind of it, but
better this or
it was, they said if you use dangerous and unusual weapons. So if it was common, people would carry around a rifle or a shotgun or a pistol. Well, at that time,
like Wyatt Earp,
they didn't quite have them then. At that time.
I'm just saying in the future.
Yeah, I would say you could make the case that if somebody was constantly parading a cannon and a wagon behind him as he went around town, they might say, you're terrifying the people. Cannons are not common, and they might have restricted them. So I think that is being worked out in the courts, just what the boundaries are, and they're using the proper standard for that, which is what existed at the time when the Second Amendment was ratified.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
And for example, they restricted people often from having weapons in legislative chambers when they were in session.
What do you think about what the Biden administration calls ghost guns?
I think they're almost certainly constitutionally protected. I think they're completely wrong on that. People have made their own homemade guns since there have been guns. And
Absolutely.
Certainly within the United States, I mean, it was very common.
That's our tradition.
Remington, who founded the Remington Arms Company, he examined a rifle or two and says, I can do that. And then he made his own rifle.
Mm-hmm.
I think he ordered some parts, and he had some parts made by other people, and he put it together, and he shot it in a competition, and everybody said, wow, that's a really cool rifle. I want one like that.
Yeah.
And then he started making some more, and then he founded a company to make them.
Mm-hmm. Colt,
Colt,
built
of
his-
course, with the 6-shooter, had a great success. Not at first. He went bankrupt with his first company.
Mm-hmm.
But then there was a great demand for repeating firearms that were reliable and accurate. And the Colt revolver, originally percussion guns, fit all those categories. I mean, and there was a Colonel Walker who was a Texas resident. Yeah, he was a Ranger, but it was, I'd say he was a Texas Ranger. And he fought in the Texas War of Independence, where they got independence from Mexico. And they had, a little after that, they had some of the early Colt Patterson revolvers, which were 5-shot percussion revolvers. And they were kind of interesting guns, a little quirky. They had a folding trigger, and I think they were 36 caliber. And so they encountered some Indians that attacked them. And the Indians were well aware that many of the Europeans had, or European-derived people had firearms, but that they took time to reload them. So they'd run by them on their horses or draw fire, get an idea how many they were, and have them expend their ammunition and unload their guns, and then they'd come at them again, expecting it wouldn't be as much the second time.
Yeah.
Well, they ran into a bunch of Rangers that had revolvers, and they killed a bunch of the Indians because they didn't expect that rapid fire resistance. And so Walker, and I hope I'm getting the history right here, he went back to Colt and sought him out and say, hey, we need a revolver, but here's some improvements that I think you could make. And they bumped it up to 44 caliber from 36, made it a 6-shooter, made the barrel longer, and they put a trigger guard instead of the folding trigger. And it became the Walker Colt, which is a massive handgun. It's like 3.5 pounds. I mean, and often in the Mexican-American War, the people who were armed with them, they wanted either a pair or 4 of them that they'd put in holsters on their ahead of their saddles. And it was a tremendous advantage over somebody who's got a single-shot muzzle loader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was very effective in the Mexican-American War.
There's been cases where the ATF has raided people. No knock warrants. Have you heard of that?
Oh, yeah. I've written quite a few articles about
Have
cases.
you really? Okay,
oh,
so
yeah.
you got into that, especially with these 3D printed guns and things like that.
Yeah, there's been several cases.
What do you think about that?
Well, it's
nasty, right?
It's nasty, and it's going to be overturned. I think the Supreme Court will say there is no tradition of requiring people to get permission from the government to build a firearm.
Or to register it.
Yes. I think registration is probably a separate issue, and that's also, I believe, going to be struck down. Yeah, absolutely.
You think that'll come before the court now?
No, it will take a while. The court only hears about 75 cases a year, the Supreme Court. And there's a lot of extraordinary cases they're hearing because of all the challenges against President Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So they're probably not going to hear more than about 75. And they seem to be willing to take maybe 2 or 3 gun-related cases in a session.
Mm-hmm.
So that limits the challenges that can come up. It looks like one of the ones they're going to take really soon is the challenge on, let's see, whether you can stretch what's called sensitive places to cover everything. You know, and from Hawaii, I think it's the Wolford case. It's called. They've said they've granted cert in the case, which means they're going to take it.
Right.
And that case, Hawaii said you can only go onto private property with a gun, even if you got a permit, if you have prior permission from the owner. So even places that are open to the public, like gas stations, the owner would have to put a sign out, guns welcome here, or something like that.
Right.
And that's never been the case in the history or tradition of the U.S. And there's been several of the states that are basically trying to subvert the Supreme Court
from hearing that.
opinions on the Second Amendment, and it's mostly California, Hawaii, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, Illinois. Yeah, probably Connecticut.
It sounds like this. If
That are trying to force this sensitive places means what we say it is. Any place we want it to.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like that might be like a blank. If that goes forward, where that gets struck down, that the ability for a state to put that type of a law in place. We actually have one similar to that in Arizona, such that like if you go to Harkins, you're not supposed to take a firearm in there. It's it's posted at where you buy your tickets. No firearms.
Oh, that's right.
So if you post that as a business owner, you're disallowed to carry a firearm into that establishment.
Right. That's correct. But
that's unconstitutional, is it not?
No, it's not, because private property owners can bar people from their private property. The case in Hawaii is the inverse of that. You have to post a sign saying you'll allow guns for anybody to be allowed.
Okay, so it's disallowed unless we say it's allowed.
Yeah, that's right.
I see.
And the attorney
guilty until you're proven innocent.
Exactly. And the attorney who's fighting that case calls it the vampire rule. He says vampires can't come into your house unless you invite them in. So I know that's a bit of weird folklore. It's probably, I don't know where that started from. But he says that's what they're saying, is that you have to invite somebody in with a firearm before they can come onto the property that's open to everybody else.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I think the Supreme Court will strike that down, and I think it'll probably happen this session. But how they will word the result and who writes the opinion all becomes important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Well, that's all the time we got really now.
Yeah.
This is
maybe you got enough for 2 shows here.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. But Dean, thank you for coming in. Maybe we'll have you back. We can talk about maybe not bears. I don't know what else.
There's a lot of other things we could talk. We could talk about just Supreme Court cases if you wanted to, or what's happening in California, or the history of the law here in Arizona.
Do you know anything about shark attacks?
A little bit.
Okay.
They're pretty uncommon.
Yeah, but I was just curious if maybe sharks are kind of like bears to you. For me, sharks are, to me, I'm fascinated by them because I am very afraid of them.
Yeah, you should be. I
should be.
I talked to a guy. I'll just tell you an anecdote from Panama. I spent about 5 years
from Panama.
Yeah, I lived about 5 years in Panama.
You lived in Panama?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
For about 5 years.
This is barely coming up.
So what?
This is barely coming up in our conversation. I would have loved to talk about Panama.
Well, we can do that another time. I was there for 5 years working for the U.S. Army down there.
Oh, you were? Okay, so you weren't an expat. A lot of people go down there.
No, I wasn't an expat. I was working, and as under the treaty, I was only allowed to work for 5 years.
Okay.
But one of the people I met was a little more than an acquaintance, but I'm not really a firm friend. Did a lot of free diving.
Oh, okay.
Spearfishing in the Perlis Islands, which are in the Pacific side near the Bay of Panama. They're miles out into the ocean there. And he one of the things I was very impressed with, he got an enormous grouper, about 600-pound one, free diving.
I think I'm just as, if not more, scared of groupers than I am of sharks.
Well, he shot this one, and then he had to come up for air and then go put another spear in it, another float to bring it up.
Things are massive creatures.
Oh, this was a big one.
And
they're worth a lot of money too, because
groupers are. I didn't know that.
Groupers are considered some of the best eating fish in the ocean.
Is that right?
Yeah,
600 pounds. Can you imagine?
I can, and he had pictures. So he's out there, and I said, what about sharks? He says, the sharks are not supposed to generally attack humans. But when I see those 18-footers out there, I get out of the water because who knows, they might make a mistake. So. So I only saw one shark of any size when I was skin diving out there, snorkeling. I did a little bit of
in Panama.
Yeah, and they're great reefs and wonderful places to skin dive. But where I went, it was off the breakwater of Cologne, right around in that area, And I saw one nurse shark, which is pretty innocuous shark. That was
Yeah, they don't
5
do
or
much.
6 feet long. That's the biggest one I saw. But my impression, especially on the Atlantic side, was that anything bigger or anything of any size, the natives, caught them and ate them quick. So.
Yeah, I'm not convinced. I think you're not supposed to say shark attack. You're supposed to say shark encounter.
Yeah, well,
It's kind of like the
I'm
bear
not big on
political
correct
correctness.
speech.
It's kind of like the bear thing. It sounds like where they're saying,
It's defensive. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But
Did the human do anything to bear? No, but he was in their territory.
one of the things that just is a nightmare in the back of my mind is you read about these World War II vets that have been downed in the Pacific during that war. Like there's a book, Unbroken. I don't know if you ever read that book.
No.
Louis Zamperini, really good.
I've read some accounts.
I mean, it was like so common. I get infuriated reading these accounts because it was like our strategy: put these young kids into these planes, and hopefully they make it, across these missions, dropping bombs and artillery. It's just like most of those things went into the ocean, and when they did, sharks ate them. Like that. That's all they did. Especially at night, people are just just bobbing around. These shipwrecks and things like that.
Yeah,
sharks are just tearing them apart.
Well, we think that is probably what. It's hard to document all that. Let me give you an example.
What else is pulling them under? I mean, there's people just pulling them on, or the sharks are just
But at
pulling
night,
them apart.
somebody goes under. What caused it? You're not sure it's a shark or not. Sometimes you can be.
You can see the fins.
But you can't see very well.
What else would it be?
Well,
Orca?
first off, they get tired, and if they don't have any flotation, they just drop. But let me give you an example of a famous situation in World War II. I'm trying to think. I think it was the island of Papua New Guinea, but I'm not sure. And they have crocodiles, saltwater crocodiles there.
Okay.
And there was some sort of peninsula with a big swamp with a lot of crocodiles in it. And the Japanese were, the only way they could escape was through this swamp. And the Allied forces had them boxed in. Well, the story was that they tried to escape through that swamp at night, and a lot of them got eaten by the crocodiles.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, these are soldiers. They have guns. They have bayonets. Doesn't sound all that likely. Maybe they drowned, whatever. And then after the war, I think it was just a few years ago, we get an account from the Japanese. They said, yeah, we retreated to that area and we saved almost all our people.
Oh, really?
So
are they trying to just put themselves on a pedestal, or
Well,
who's
I think
telling the truth here?
It's always good if you can get stories from both sides in these things, and more is hard to get truth out of because everybody has an incentive to lie. And
I was just down in Puerto Vallarta a couple of weeks ago. I got dive certified down there, did scuba stuff down there, and everywhere we went, there were signs for crocodiles. Watch out for crocodiles.
Crocodiles?
Right?
Where was it?
I thought it was a joke at first. Puerto Vallarta. That's on the
that's
on the Pacific side of Mexico, down north of
there are
Mazatlan.
There are. I know that there are some crocs. There's a few saltwater crocs. There's a few saltwater crocs in Florida actually, but they're very small numbers.
I don't know if these are. I don't know if they're saltwater or what. They were just crocodiles, and the signs are just all over the place.
I think they probably are crocs.
Yeah.
Because it seems to me the alligators are pretty much restricted to Florida.
Yeah.
But I'm not 100% sure.
But yeah, no, and so because I saw the signs, I thought it was funny, and so I took Uber everywhere. So every Uber driver, I'm bringing this up, and they were saying, yeah, that we see news reports all the time recently because I guess what is happening is they're developing certain areas of right next to the coast, and so it kind of flushed these crocodiles out, and now they're kind of on the prowl. They don't have a place to go. It's the humans' fault again,
Yeah. Yeah.
But they were saying that one of the Uber drivers was like, yeah, there was just an attack the other day, ate some ladrones, so some robbers of turtle.
Ladrones, yeah.
Turtle eggs.
Turtle eggs.
Yeah, I guess it's common. I guess you can get a lot of money for turtle eggs. I don't know.
Well,
And so these robbers, is what the Uber driver was saying. They went in the cover of night to go and steal these turtle eggs, and the Crocs got them.
it's at night. Who gave the report?
Yeah.
I mean,
The Uber driver. Just kidding.
yeah, but I'm saying I'm a scientist by training.
It's true.
I'm skeptical by training.
Well, it's true. It's
and,
true.
And so that's
I operate by, if it's on the internet, then it's true.
yeah. Abe Lincoln said so.
That's right. That's right. Honest Abe.
Yeah.
Well, Dean, thank you for coming in. We'll get this up and we'll send it over to the radio station by Monday.